Good morning, everybody. My name is Nicola and I am simply a stitcher. Welcome to my channel. If you're new around here, welcome. This is a Stitch With Me, one of my fortnightly Stitch With Me videos. And if you're a returning viewer, thank you very much indeed for coming back and joining me today. So today, as promised in my last floss tube, which was last Tuesday, I am going to do a Stitch With Me with this gorgeous piece. This is Aimee Stewart's A Stitching Shelf, and I am stitching the regular size max colour version. So it is quite confetti heavy, but before I get into the stitching, I just wanted to show you guys how I set up my floss for this project, because one or two people have asked, so I thought I'd do that. So here in front of me I have a large box, and it's just from a local sort of discount store here in the UK. It's very pink. It's just got magnetic opening on it, and when you open it up, inside I've got all of my flosses for this project, which you'll have seen if you've been on my Instagram. So they're all in number order, starting at number 155, running right the way up to the very last colour, which is B5200. So when I kitted this one up, I worked it out as a metre of thread per 300 stitches, which I know for 25 count is quite generous, but I'd sooner have more than not enough, especially as this is a confetti heavy piece. So I went down the number of stitches on the pattern. Down here I've got them set to the left hand side, and like I say, for number 155, because there's less than 300 stitches, I only need one strand of thread, so corresponding one strand of thread. For like 310, there's 16,156 stitches, but because I'll only put a maximum of 10 on, of 10 lengths, there's only enough here for 3,000 stitches. So at some point I'm going to have to top up on 310. Now I'm not concerned about topping up. I know lots of people, this is just the way that I've kitted this. I know the people do it differently, but I'm not concerned about die lots and things, because as I said before, I used to do some kitting for Pain-Free Crafts. So all of these threads have come directly from the cones anyway, and I've still got plenty left. So I'm not concerned that there's going to be any kind of die lot issue. So that's that. So we're going to now have a look, earthquake, at the stitching. I'm still in my PJs. It's early, it's like 7:45. So I'm going to show you my stitching now. So this is stitched on 25 counts, and it's 1/1 full cross. And the way I'm doing it, if anybody on here has seen Stitching Mommy and her typewriter method, it's very similar to that, except what I do, there are a couple of parts here too, which I'll explain in a minute. Instead of working across just a single row, I work on a 10 by 10 block, left to right. So for instance, I'm going to go in right close now. This is the next 10 by 10 block. So what I'll do, when I'm setting up the next colour, I'll take the one stitch, which is the blank spaces, which is to the furthest left, which is this stitch here. Use my needle, it's going to be easier, which is this stitch here, and then I'll stitch across the 10 by 10 blocks and fill in the stitches until I run out of thread. Now, as you can see here, because some of these colours didn't run across, I've come down and dropped them in to the blocks underneath, which is fine. It's not breaking any sort of, you know, rule or anything that I set myself. But my next new thread will be this one, and I'll work it in across the top where I can. If I have to work it, like say the rest of them in this square, they don't appear in this square, but they do appear in this one and this one and then this one, then I'll just travel across those blocks, but I won't leap over a 10 by 10 block, if that makes sense. So what I'm doing is I'm actually moving the frame quite a lot. Just to zoom out so you can see my frame. As you can see, I've got a clip frame, and it's about 8 inches long, that, so I can only work a certain sort of size in any case, in any instance, at any one time. So I have to move the frame. But when I know that I've still got like threads in these colours along the top, I'm just parking them, and then when it comes to the next row, I'll go back to the left and then work again and then do the same thing. So I'm just trying it. If it works, it works. Yeah, I'm quite enjoying, you know, sort of doing it like this. Let's just zoom in again. So yeah, so I think now it's time to have a little bit of a stitch with me, and I'm going to start just working these park threads. So you might find that the camera does move across my top row of stitches, and if you do, if you're able to follow, you know, it'd be fantastic. Let me know what you think to this method. I just think it's quite nice that you can see pretty much a whole line, a whole row of stitches done. I do like that. Just trying to get this into focus a little bit. I think that's better. So let's crack on. So here we go. Hope everybody is doing well. I have resisted and had no more new starts. After having 2 over these last few weeks, I think I definitely have to get something finished, don't I? Thank you all very much indeed for your comments on my last, wrong one, on my last floss tube. I did read them all, and you had some great suggestions over what I can do in these Stitch With Me's conversation wise. So today I am going to start with the first suggestion that I had, and that was, I'm so sorry, I can't remember who commented it. I think, oh blimey. The lady who commented about it was somebody who knew Andy. Or should I say knew of Andy. Her children went to the same school as him in Lincolnshire, and of course I am up here in Yorkshire. So she asked the question, a very fair question: how does a boy from Lincolnshire get to be with a woman in Yorkshire? How does it happen? And I thought, oh right, okay. Let me see if I can find the comment actually. I'm sorry, the camera's wobbling because it's attached to the table where the laptop is, and of course as I'm scrolling through the laptop to find the comment. Julia, that's it, that's the name of the lady. Her name is Julia. So Julia wanted to know how did Andy end up basically from Lincolnshire up here with me in Yorkshire? Well, so I have to give you a little bit of background. I first got married in 1997, and I had my children, my three girls, in 2001, 2004 and 2009. Unfortunately, my marriage was not a happy one, and for a lot of years I was quite unhappy. My ex-husband worked away and he was rarely at home, and it wasn't that he worked away because his job necessitated it. He found a job that meant he worked away from home, if that makes sense. So he actually actively chose to work away from home. So for a number of years I was bringing up the girls effectively as a single mom. My ex-husband was around occasionally for longer stints, but usually he was only home at weekends. So I didn't get to see him. The girls didn't get to see him very much at all. I had a drive, if you like, an ambition that we were in rental accommodation, that we needed to have our own home. So from the time that our second daughter was born, I was busy saving a deposit for a house, because I wanted to give my children that stability, that we had our own home, and we had our own home in a nice area of our choosing. So in 2011, bearing in mind daughter Victoria was born in 2004, we actually finally achieved this, or should I say, well, I finally achieved it, because I was the person who kept tabs, if you like, kept reins on the money and made it happen. During that time I'd also been working for myself, and I met quite a lot of people, and I'd sort of broadened up a circle of friends, one of which was the people who ran the ice hockey club Sheffield Steelers. I'm quite a fan of ice hockey, although I don't get to watch it much these days. I'm just too busy. And I used to get tickets sent to me, and I'm, oh, this is fabulous. Loved going to the ice hockey. Anyway, we moved into this house in 2011, and things with the ex-husband just continued as they were. He was home usually at weekends. He'd come home Friday, be off on Saturday, come home Sunday, be off on Monday, be home on Friday, kind of thing. But it wasn't like he was home all day. He'd be home for literally an overnight, and enough time for me to sort of wash and iron his uniform to send him off again. It wasn't a very nice life. We just sort of bumbled along, and we had our problems. Lauren became very unwell at one point. She had pneumonia and she was in hospital. And although my ex-husband was very concerned about her, I wouldn't ever take that away from him. He was concerned about her. He didn't cope very well with looking after the two girls when we were in hospital, and there were another couple of things happened, and I think that was at the point that I realised that my marriage was effectively over. This was in 2012. And I sort of come to the realisation that, 15 years down the line, 3 kids, and there was just nothing there. Move the camera along a wee bit. I'll try and zoom in again. That's it. In 2013, I just sort of plodded along because I didn't want to break up my marriage. I got girls, I got the children. I come from a broken home, and I didn't want them to come from a broken home. But then in 2013, in February, my mum died. And my mum dying had the most profound effect on me. It made me realise that life was too short. During this point, I'd met Andy because he'd been going to the ice hockey as well with his family. And we had become friends. Now, males and females can be friends without anything coming in between, and that's the way that we were. And where Andy lived, if he wanted to go to hockey and I wasn't going or whatever, well, I lived on the route. I live on the route to from where he used to live to hockey. So he used to call in and have an hour or two with me and a chat and what have you. And I realised after a while that for him things were unhappy at home as well. And like I said, we'd been great friends for about, well, not for long actually, for about 6 months. Andy had already moved out of the village by then, and he was living in Doncaster via another couple of places along the way, because he'd lived in Barnsley and he'd lived in Gainsborough, and he was at Doncaster. Anyway, as I said, my mother's death, like I said, had a very profound effect, and it was compounded by a further death literally 1 week later. My best friend lost her husband quite suddenly at a very young age. He was 51. Now, I was devastated by this, not only for the fact that obviously I knew the guy and I was friends with him, but for my friend too. And things sort of went through the motions in February, in March, in April. I was kind of living like a bit of a zombie. Didn't really know what I was doing. John was still, my ex-husband was still working away. And it just felt awful. Life just felt awful. It's the only way I can describe it. So what I did, camera move back to the part threads. I just put up with it, and I don't really know why I did. But in April, the girls and I were invited, well, and my ex-husband as well. Excuse me. We were invited to an event, and it wasn't April, it was May. It coincided with Victoria's birthday. And I said to the ex-husband, will you be able to take us to and from said event? And he was like, made a perfect excuse in the book that he could, and basically the upshot was it was a no. So I asked Andy, and I said, can you take me and the girls to the local rugby club and pick us up at such and such a time? And he's like, yeah, no problem, I'll do that. Can I stop at yours rather than go back to Hexthorpe? Yeah, no problem. Here's my keys, let yourself in. John will be home soon, my ex-husband, he'll be home. And I said, okay, fair enough. So Andy came here and sat and, you know, watched TV or played on his phone or whatever he did, I don't know. And my ex-husband then came home, and he knew Andy was there because I told him. And Andy kept messaging me, and he says, you won't believe things that he's saying about you. And it's not in a good way. I come to thoroughly expect it, and I wasn't surprised with what Andy told me. The next day, Andy had stayed here that night because it was, you know, it was late by the time we got back. And I said, well, look, just keep on the sofa. We'll treat you to breakfast in the morning. I'll cook, you know, fry up and what have you, and blah, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, no problem. Next morning, ex-husband gets up. It's Victoria's birthday. He barely acknowledges that. We all had breakfast, and even though he was a visitor to my home, Andy volunteered to wash up, which I thought was lovely. And then my ex-husband left for work with a parting shot that it was about time that he got out of this hellhole. And for me, when you're describing your home as a hellhole, there's something seriously wrong and something's got to give. So Victoria's birthday, really, really awful. Not for her, because we did everything we could to make the day as special as we could for her. We took the girls out, and spoiled them, and cake, and, you know, all the rest of it. We did everything that we could for the girls. I'm going to park this thread in a second. And Andy went home, and when my ex-husband came home, I said to him, I think we need to talk. And at that point, I ended my marriage, which was not something that sat well with me, because I'm of the school of thought where if you get married, you're married, that's it, you stay married, you don't just get a divorce, you fix things. You know, that was me. But I think he come to the realisation as well that it weren't going to be fixed, because he just had this disdain. You know, here I was, working away, you know, looking after a home, bringing up the children, but I don't really think that he'd actually ever wanted that. I think he wanted his freedom. So we agreed mutually there and then that was it, we were going to separate. Now, I'd realised that my marriage was over for about a year, but the stubbornness in me didn't want to admit to it. But as silly as it sounds, after my mum died, it became much easier. I think perhaps because I didn't have to explain myself to my mum. Andy and I had got closer, and we'd got closer since my mum had died. And it wasn't, you could technically say that we were having an affair, but it wasn't really an affair because there was nothing between me and my ex-husband anymore. Coffee time. Oh, morning coffee. And I think my ex-husband kind of knew this. He knew that me and Andy were sort of together. I think myself that he was not exactly faithful himself. I mean, why else would somebody insist on working away all the time? There were one or two other bits and pieces that were going on as well, which I did know about, but I'm not going to go into them. Then in July, or it might have been June, I can't remember, I think it might have been June, my dad died. So I'd had my mum die in February, and then my dad die a few months later. Me and my dad had been out of touch. Oh, wrong way, wrong one. Me and my dad had been out of touch for a number of years. But I did, you know, make contact with him and make peace with him, you know, before he died. And Andy and I, at that point, we did then really become much closer, because he was an incredible support after I lost my dad. And my ex-husband, it sounds awful to say this because it was really quick, but my ex-husband moved out and Andy moved straight in. And we've been inseparable ever since. So this was in July 2013 that Andy moved in. I was fair to my ex-husband and said, look, I'm not just going to bounce you out on the street with the clothes on your back kind of thing. You know, I said to him, look, you need to have somewhere to live. You need to have, you know, some furniture and stuff like that. And I helped him with that. But yeah, he moved out and Andy moved in. And I've never been happier. Andy's wonderful with the children. He's got, obviously, my 3, but he's got 2 of his own as well. He's happy to spend his time. And I think that's very important when your kids are young. I mean, when me and the ex split up, I got a 9-year-old, a 3-year-old, and an 11-year-old. So it's quite an impressionable age, really. But Andy was there for them, and he spent time with them. And they absolutely looked up to him for that. And they still look up to him now. Me and Andy, over the next sort of few years, we just sort of carried on, and we made as best a life for us and the children as we possibly could. And we did the taking them on family holidays, and we were there when they fell over and scraped knees, and bought school uniforms, and, you know, made sure that, you know, they got the favourite sort of foods in and that kind of thing. And there were times when it was very hard. My ex-husband, when he left, literally cut me off without a penny. And I had very little. But I made it work. And Andy made it work. And he didn't sort of say, well, I didn't sign up for this, it's too hard. He just cracked on and got on with it. We kept saying that we were going to get married, and it wasn't until I started working for my current employer that actually being married was something that became important. If anything had happened to me, then control of, before me and Andy were married, then any control over my estate would have gone straight to my ex-husband, which we didn't want, because my children were still minors, and as the legal guardian, you know, or not guardian, as the other parent with parental responsibility, he would have had to sort of, you know, been able to look, you know, deal with my estate should the worst have happened. And that didn't sit well with me. It was really bad. And I said to Andy, I says, we're going to have to do something. So he said, right, we're getting married. We were both divorced because, going back to sort of 2013, about 3 weeks after my mum died, Andy and his wife permanently separated. And at this point we were both divorced, so we were like, yeah, let's get married. So we got married in 2018, in September 2018. We got married we have a park here called, where I live, and it has a museum in the middle of it, and within the museum there's a marriage room. So we booked the wedding. The girls were my bridesmaids. I didn't have bridesmaids at my first wedding. Even though it was a church wedding, I didn't have any bridesmaids. The girls were my bridesmaids. There were a total of 11 people, including us. It was a beautiful, quiet, sort of intimate ceremony. There were the 3 girls, my stepdad, my brother, my sister, my nephew, the photographer and his wife, Andy's parents, and me and Andy. And I realised that that's more than 11, I think. But the photographer and his wife were not actually, well, even though they are friends of ours, they were not, you know, they were there as photographers rather than inclusion in the party. What I'll do is at the end of this video, I'll pick a few shots from the day and share them with you. So yeah, to the left. So now I'm going to pick up that stitch. And it was a lovely ceremony, and then afterwards we went and had an afternoon tea in a bistro. So yeah, me, Andy, Hannah, Victoria, Lauren, my stepdad, my brother, my sister, my nephew, me and Andy. So 11 of us. We went and had our this afternoon tea, stay at the local bistro, and we spent a nice few hours there, and then we went off on our honeymoon. And boy oh boy, is Andy full of surprises. I've actually had to tell him to stop with the surprises because he's making life a bit difficult for me. We'd had a holiday booked to Rome a few days after the wedding anyway. It was actually part of a Christmas present to me in 2017. Andy says to me, what would you like for Christmas? I says, I want to go to Rome because I want to go and see the Sistine Chapel. So that's what we did. And when the wedding ceremony and the reception, as it were over, Andy said, I hope your case is packed because we're not going home, we're going somewhere else. So, oh, okay. I mean, he'd already told me before, make sure your case is packed before the wedding. Anyway, we got a taxi, and the taxi took us to Sheffield to the train station, and then we got a train to Liverpool. And I'm thinking, where the cripes are we going? And the train stopped at Liverpool John Lennon Airport, and I thought, you know, oh, are we, you know, going on a plane somewhere? And Andy sort of sat there, and I'm like, okay, we're not getting off here. So he gets into Liverpool, and he's like, right, come with me. And it's like a magical mystery tour. I can't find the whole of this stitch. Like a magical mystery tour, walking through the streets of Liverpool. And we end up at the dock. And then right in front of us, there's a ferry. And what he'd done is that he'd booked us, in the intervening time between the wedding and the Rome trip, which was planned, he'd booked us a few days on the Isle of Man. Then we were going to London for a day or two for a concert and what have you. And then we were going to Rome. So we had like this long honeymoon. And I was just like, I was blown away. Absolutely blown away. because he'd arranged it all. He'd arranged like car hire and, you know, all of the other bits and pieces. And yeah, we had a magical time. And, you know, my stepdad looked after the children till I was, you know, to have that time. And it was just fabulous. Just fabulous. And in the last, well, we'll have been married 4 years in September. And in the last 4 years, he's continued to be fabulous. And, you know, we spend a lot of time together. We go out filming for Village Idiot. He's very supportive of, you know, my endeavours and obviously our work, and he supports me in that. And it's just, he's just amazing, you know. He's a real amazing individual. And now we live in a town. He's out of village life, but I think he'd like to go back to village life, and I'm pretty sure that at some point in the future we will go off and live in a village. Maybe when the girls have grown up and left home, if that ever happens. Not the growing up part, the leaving home. You know, it's like when kids get comfortable. So yeah, that's the story of me and him. Well, like I said, what I'll do is I'll send over some pictures for him, so when he edits this video, he can put in a few pictures of us on our wedding day, so you can see. Yeah. Hope that answers your question, Julia. So basically, I mean, I think you could say that our relationship sort of was a bit like a phoenix rising from the ashes of a totally disastrous year. And you know, we're very strong together, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. There we go. I don't know if you guys have noticed, but this piece is quite confetti heavy, and the most I can do sort of stitching wise on it is about 500 a day. It gets quite hard going after a while. With 240 colours in it, or nearly 240 colours, it can be quite hard. Oh dear, an itchy nose now. Well, I have to work today again. I'll be quite happy next week because I get an extra day off. It's a bank holiday here in the UK, August bank holiday. So that means Monday is an additional day, and I might have to see what we can plan to do. If we can do anything with the girls on that day, get them out of the house. And then next week I'll be doing my usual floss tube on the Tuesday. I'm quite enjoying doing it on a fortnightly basis. I think it works quite well. Although I do keep forgetting to say 2 weeks. I normally say a month. I suppose until I get into the habit properly of it being 2 weeks. It's a small price to pay, isn't it? Andy's gone off filming today. Eldest one is at the dog kennels. Youngest one is still in bed sleeping away. Middle one is at her volunteer. I'm not quite sure what it is. It is a charity. I'm not quite sure what they do. Let's have a look into that. So yeah, it's a bit quiet. Haven't even seen the cat yet. And the cat has been coming to sit on my knee quite a lot. She's never shown herself to be a lap cat, but just lately she has been coming and parking herself on my knee quite a lot. So I think she must be getting soft in her old age. Either that or she's just hungry. So usually she comes to us when she wants something. But she's not made an appearance yet today. She'll have had a belly full of food at sort of 6 o'clock this morning and has gone to sleep it off somewhere, if I know her. I'm pretty sure that you can tell this is why I like it. Doing these stitches with me in the morning is so lovely and quiet. All I can hear is some birds outside, the occasional car passing, and with it being summer, stitching at this time of day is quite cool. We've had a couple of days where it's been warm again, another sort of heat wave, but nowhere near the last one. We've hit sort of 26, 27 degrees, which is about 10 or 12 degrees cooler than it was when I was in the hotel room. Just marking off these stitches. Redry my coffee. Okay. I've not done many so far. I've done about 110 stitches in the last sort of 45 minutes. Well, 35 minutes if you count the blurb at the front talking about my setup. So this confetti is in lots of colour changes. It is taking a little bit longer, but not unreasonably so. And it's still a pleasure to stitch this one. I can see like the blossoms coming out from under my needle, and when I sort of line it up against the mock-up, I'm like, oh yeah, I can see it now. I've worked on a few projects this month, this fortnight should I say, so far. I've worked on the little lamb, I've worked on Minas Tirith, I've worked on the man with Princess, I've worked on Envy, and I've worked on this. Trying to sort of put in a little bit on each I think it's a good way to go. But I think next year I'm going to not have a full coverage target to meet. Like this year I wanted to meet 1,000 stitches a day, full coverage. But I want to do some non-full coverage pieces next year. And I've got some non-full coverage pieces that are works in progress that need finishing. So I've decided not to target or set any goals in terms of full coverage, but just sort of keep carrying on, just continue on with what I'm doing, and make sure, and I like, you know, perhaps develop a proper rotation. You know, literally spend, you know, 2 days on this, 2 days on that, 2 days on that, and so on and so forth. It might just be the way to go, I don't know. I want to see sort of progress on all of my pieces, and pandemic's not been, or barely been touched this year. It's literally had like about half a day's worth of stitching on it. I've got a stamp kit that's on the go as well, the Christmas window, and I just want to make progress on them all, but still enjoy the process, enjoy the stitching process. Let's keep emergency tissue. Runny nose this morning. I went to a work event a couple of weeks ago, and I met up with some people who I've not seen in like 2.5 years since the start of lockdown. And it was really nice because one of them literally come bolting over to me and she went, "Oh my goodness, I have seen some of the stitching that you do on Facebook and I am astonished." You know, I mean, she was referring to like my recent finishes of, well, my recent finish of Avarice and then the start of Envy. And she was just absolutely astonished by it. And, you know, we ended up having like a little chat about it. Even though she's not a stitcher herself, it's so nice when people come and say, "Oh my God, isn't that fab?" And, you know, I'm quite proud of myself, so. Right, that's that colour over with. Okay. One of my ex-managers I have on Facebook as well. I've known him for you know, for a while. I posted a picture of Envy, and when I post an update picture, I put something like however many stitches out of whatever the total is, or whatever the percentage is on Pattern Keeper. And he saw one of these pictures and it was Envy at about 4% done, 3 or 4% done. And he kind of, Envy's got a total of 240,000 stitches, and he expressed astonishment by putting some expletives in with those numbers. He was just astonished, he couldn't believe it. And I'm like, well, I've got a piece on the go that's 3 times the size of that. And this one is bigger than Avarice or Envy as well, because this one is 375,550 stitches, and those were 240,000. So, and the Middle Earth map is 700 and something thousand, and the Aframov piece that I've yet to start still, naughty Nikki, the Aframov piece is something like the best part of 1 million stitches, 990,000 or something. So yeah, a lot of stitches, a lot of work, but they're so beautiful when they're done. Pixel art, that's how I describe cross stitching. It's like pixel art. each little cross is in a little pixel, and then when they come together, make the most fabulous image. Join them up with a bit of back stitch sometimes, but other than that, just the pixels. Anyway, so there we go. That is this piece. This is stitching shelf. I made 1% on this the other day, and I'm currently up to 1.28% before I mark off this next lot of stitches. This one is going to have a long way to go. I have this app on my phone called Stitch Pal, and I'm recording my progress of it in there. If I did 100 stitches a day, I think it works out something like 10 years to do. According to Stitch Pal, the rate I'm going, it's going to be finished in 2025 with about 400 to 500 stitches a day, around about 500 a day, sometimes more, sometimes less. Because what it's done is every time I work on it, I put in the number of stitches that I've worked, and it calculates what the average is per day, and if you continued on that average per day, it tells you when the estimated finish would be. So of course it's different every time I work on it. The first day when I did 1,000 stitches in it, and it was a hard going 1,000, it told me I'd be done in a year. It's not going to be a year, it's going to be much more than a year. But it'll be fab when it's done. So, oh yeah. I'm still considering, as I said, trying to get in a second stitch with me, one with, you know, just an ASMR or with music one. I haven't fully decided on that yet, so hang fire with that. And at the moment as well, seeing as I am over over 850 subscribers, I won't be long and I'm out of the 1,000 subs club, the under 1,000 subs club. So if you've not subscribed, help me get up there, guys. When I get to the 1,000, and I'll be able to start doing lives from my phone. Oh, excuse me, I do beg your pardon. But yeah, when I'm able then to do lives from my phone, it'll mean that this kind of thing will become a live stream, and I can perhaps, you know, do like a live stream, like, you know, one evening a fortnight or something as well, which will be nice. But I'm not technologically minded enough to do it from my laptop and link my phone to my laptop and all the rest of it. I'm rubbish at anything like that. So, you know, once I get to that 1,000, then we'll look at doing some lives, I think. And we might even have like some kind of different videos, not just, you know, just me sat here stitching. I might sort of have us, you know, like a something like what the Stitchy Witch does, you know, bit of a conversation, you know, not worrying about are we doing enough stitching, but having like that sort of friendly group of people. Anyway, now been going for 55 minutes. Tot up of stitches. Did about 150 there. I'm going to have to leave this one here because I have got, excuse me, I've got to get ready for work. But I'm pretty sure that you guys will have kind of got the way I'm doing it. So taking the very furthest left stitch, working from top to bottom, left to right, working in that thread along the top row, occasionally dropping to the bottom row if need be to allow the travelling. And I'm really enjoying it. It's a nice method to use. It's adds a new dimension, a bit of interest to the stitching, doesn't it? Oh, excuse me. I'm not tired. But yeah, I do need to go get ready for work because I'm starting in 25 minutes and I have a couple of bits I need to do first, i.e. get out the Minnie Mouse pyjamas, which you all would have seen at the beginning. So all that's left for me to say, guys, is thanks for watching. Happy stitching. Do take care. I'll see you on the next one, and stick around for a few pictures of Andy and I's wedding day. Again, you know, thanks all for your support. It's really lovely to see. I love reading your comments and so on. But yeah, I'll see you next week for a floss tube. Bye for now, everyone.